Jumbo au Hibara Saburi.
Jumbo.
It's your boy, African King Darius, back with another beautiful, beautiful round of that knowledge we need to be able to survive this world. Donald Trump opened up the government. Let's give him a round of applause, y'all. But sadly, it's only for the next 3 weeks. So don't get too excited. This man is unpredictable. Same way he opened it is the same way he can shut it down. Until he gets the wall he wants, that's going to be from, all the way from North America, extended all the way past Canada, all the way back up to North America again. That means all the way around the world. Literally giving the earth a ring around it that's going to be his dumb wall. Until then, he's going to keep doing what he's doing. So today I wanted to talk about a topic that, I feel like I should have touched on, but I've noticed I've actually have not touched on this topic. And I've went through my videos and ironically I haven't touched on this topic, which is weird because being as this is like my educational field, I'm surprised I haven't talked about it, but I haven't. So recently it was brought to my knowledge by, someone I know. They were confused as to why children respond to different things so differently. Why is it that one child responds to a social situation differently than another child? And they never understood it. And I took that time yesterday when I was asked about it. I took that time to educate them and tell them exactly what I was taught. And through my tenure of being a teacher, how different children are and how children respond to social situations differently than other children. So, with this time, I would like to educate everybody on, excuse me, how to approach children correctly, okay? Now, this topic is going to talk about understanding children's approach towards certain social situations in their life. And it's also going to talk about how we as adults have to understand how to approach children. It's going to give you tips on how to approach each child given in each situation that I bring up. So let's begin because this is going to be good. Trust me, I love teaching this because I've actually taught it to a group of people and it had a lot of high standing results with it, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be fun for you to understand as well. So let's get right into this. Today I have here with me, and I'm going to use them as examples, my son Noah. Say hello, Noah. I guess not. And of course, my young Prince Christopher. Say hello, Christopher.
Hi.
So, let's begin. Most people don't realize this about children, but children are not the same. All kids are different, as all adults are different. Each and every person on this earth has things about them that make them unique, that make them themselves. Those things are called traits. Okay? T-R-I-A-T-S. Traits. Okay? Those traits are characteristics that define us as to being ourselves. Okay? Say it with me, Christopher. Say traits.
Trick.
That's right.
With the F.
At the end. Because it's more than one.
More than one.
That's right. We all have traits about us that make us who we are. Unique, defining factors that make us up to who we are. For example, my traits about me is that I love sports. I do like to play sports, but I don't want to play it professionally. I love reading. I love writing. I love watching movies. I love going for walks. I love talking. I love being active. Those are traits about me. Characteristics that make me up to as to who I am. But at the same time, with children, it's a bit more in depth. These traits that these children have can be characterized by what they do on a daily basis. For example, these traits about these children, okay, well, the example, actually, let me get to that. One child might at home might be a child that runs around a lot at home. So that's called an active child. Okay, that child has an active trait. Okay, one child might be a book reader at home. They don't run around and play with toys all day. They sit still and read books. That's called a sedentary trait. Okay.
Yeah. I always like to play with toys.
Which means you have an active trait, not a sedentary trait. Okay, so one child might be a blend of both, where they equally run around and read.
And play with toys.
That exactly. Well, I just said that. So that child is called a neutral trait. Okay. Then there's the child who is a bit off-putting. They don't like to be around other children because they're a bit skittish. That's called a shy trait. Okay? Then there's the child who likes to be around other kids. That's called a sanguine trait. Okay? That's called a sanguine trait. Say it with me, Christopher. Say sanguine. Right, sanguine trait. Okay. So that means that child likes to be around other kids. Okay?
Yeah.
And then there's the child who only likes to be around adults because they feel protected. That's a fearful trait. Okay? That's right. Children all have characteristics about them that are somewhat similar to us adults. After all, they're nothing but the pre-stage form of adults before they become adults. Okay? So we all know that. These traits about these children give you ways to be able to engage them. So we're going to talk about each trait. So let's start with the active trait. The active trait is a trait that pretty much describes that a child likes to be in high motor activities. Okay? I'm using terminology, man, I remember. Woo! They like to be in high motor activities. That means that their fine motor skills and gross motor skills are mostly developed to the point where as though they can do high strenuous activities like play basketball or catch a football or shoot a ball into a hoop or throw a football or tackle someone. They can do the complicated things that come into the ideology of sports. They're able to do that. They also know how to push their legs on a swing. They know how to slide down a slide. They know how to bounce a ball. They know how to kick a soccer ball. They know how to, play hockey and shoot a puck into a goal. They know how to play rugby. Those children with the active trait, like to do very high strenuous activities that include using their fine motor skills and their gross motor skills. The way to engage a child with an active trait is to always come up with an activity that always keeps them moving. When you're engaging with that child, you can do activities that require them to move around, to engage in something. For example, one of my favorite things I like to do, Do an activity with the child where you can make a game out of it. One of the games I made up one day that I like doing, and I've done this with my son, is I played something called store tag. Okay, store tag is this. And I'm going to do this with you, Christopher, when you get to be a lot older, because you did good the first time, but you didn't really understand what you were doing. When you get to be a little older, you'll understand it more. Shh, 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 shh. Okay, listen, get back underneath the blanket, son. So, store tag is basically like this. You give the child a list of things that you need, right? You both adults have to be present. One adult goes with the child to go get the list, and you guys pretty much go to each list and you play tag. What happens is one person will have on their phone a video of you, mostly FaceTime, and you'll have your video of FaceTime. And y'all start out going to the store, getting to a different item that's near the same area. For example, let's say if we're inside Walmart and I need Chris to go get the cereal. And let's say that I need to go in the children's area to go pick up some cereal for Noah. Well, we can do something called, store tag. Basically, both of us rush off to get to our item, and whoever gets there and press tag on that item first wins. So that means you get a picture of it, and you say tag, and once you get a picture of it, we look at the timestamp as to who got their picture, because every picture is a timestamp on it, if y'all don't know. You look at the timestamp as to who got their picture first, and then once, depending on who got their picture, that person gets a point. At the end of the day, depending on who has the most points, that person is the person who wins the game. They normally get a treat. Okay. I played this one time with Chris. Don't get pop. Don't get pop. Don't get pop. Lay down that pillow. Lay down that pillow. Lay down your pillow. So, pretty much with the active child, you have to be doing something that engages their high motor that they have when it comes to wanting to do things. Those type of children are going to be children that are not going to calm down. You cannot take a child that has a high motor who likes to run around to a museum. You cannot take a child who has a high motor to the grocery store and sit them in the cart. They're not going to keep still. And you can't keep telling them, keep still, keep still, keep still, keep still. They're not going to do that. What you're doing is you're not engaging that high motor that they have. You're doing what you would do with a sedentary child with a child with a high motor that has an active trait. The sedentary trait and active trait are two completely different traits. You're not going to get a person with an active trait to do the things of a sedentary trait. That's just not going to happen. It's not. It's not. They're going to become very bored very quickly, and they're not going to enjoy themselves. And by the end of that trip, you're going to think you had a good time, and they're going to tell you straight up, this was bullshit. That's exactly what they're going to say. This was bullshit. I'd rather literally be eating a dog turd than doing what I just did with you.
Dog turd?
Their child's not going to say exactly that, but that's exactly what they're going to be thinking. They're going to be thinking to themselves, I'd rather been eating a dog turd than doing what I just did with you.
Ew, that's disgusting.
So you have to understand it. The thing that really makes me so mad is the fact that everything about what to do as far as it goes with children, a lot of people say there is no instruction manual. Well, I got one question for you. How the did I learn how to raise my kid? I can say that. How the did I learn how to raise my kid? I successfully, or am successfully, raising 2 kids correctly. How the heck did I raise such an intelligent, bright young man and my son, Christopher, and whole entire daggone time, I literally did stuff out of a book. So, phooey on that bullcrap when people say there's no instruction manual. Yes, there is. Go to your local library, get you something called the baby book. Go pick that joint up, take a couple of early childhood education classes, and learn something. There you go. That's your instruction manual. That's your instruction manual. Go pick up the book called The Baby Book from the library. Read that one till the day the daggone child is born. And read it from when the child is born all the way until the child turns 3. Go take a couple of early childhood education courses, or basically go get your 90, your 45, your 3-hour, and your 2-hour communication course. Go take all of that stuff. Go get each and every one of them certifications. And trust me when I say this, they will teach you how to engage your child. They will teach you how to engage your child. They will teach you everything you need to learn on how to engage your child. That's as basically instruction manual as it can get. So there is no excuse as to how anybody can't say they don't know how to interact with children. Because it's not that you don't know how to interact with children. It's just that you lack the effort that they're of. And maybe you need to be put inside of a closet all your life where you can stay in there and only interact with the dust mites that's in the closet. Because you interacting with humans just doesn't make any sense. Maybe you need to be stuck to the confines of your house all your life and never interacting with society at all, period. Because there's no excuse with not knowing how to interact with children. I mean, there's books, for God's sakes, that teach you how to do it. I mean, there's places you can go. So there is no damn excuse. But people give a retarded excuse for some odd reason. Children with the active trait. Okay, let's get back on track. Children with the active trait, they're my favorite type of kids because they're kids you can do a lot of interactive activities with. For example, you can put on an interactive skit with them. No, you can't put on a puppet show. They're not going to sit still for that. You can put on a skit for them. You can use them during the skit. They're the best ones to use during the skit. They're people who can do a lot of acting. So you can say, okay, let's say if I did a skit about sharing, okay, I could be Mr. Teacher and the children could be the 2 children that need to learn how to share. I can go grab David and I can go grab Isabella, and both of them have the active trait. I can say, Isabella, I want you to go over there and play with the blocks. And Isabella could go over there and play with the blocks. Then I can say, David, go over there to Isabella and ask her, can you play? Isabella, I want you to tell David no. So he can go over there and say, Isabella, can I play with the blocks? And Isabella can say, no, I'm playing with the blocks. And then I can say, now, Isabella, we want to learn to share because sharing is caring. And because David is our friend, we're going to share. So why don't you allow David to play with the blocks with you? Okay, David, you can play with the blocks with me. And now they're playing with the blocks. A lot of people call this the white way on how to handle things. It doesn't work for black folk. Okay, well, I could have sworn my skin is about as black as tar. It's not black as tar, it's chocolate. So my skin is chocolate. I mean, the color of, hot cocoa. Last time I checked. Yep, the color of hot cocoa. And I could have sworn I had 2 brown-skinned babies. So, unless I must be the missing link as to what happens when a white person sits out in the sun too damn long, I don't see how you saying it doesn't apply to black folk. Because, hey, my son, he was raised correctly. It's working with him. Yep, it's working with him. And he's black. And my other son, Noah, same thing. He's black. He just mastered the ability to walk, mastering the ability to talk. I mean, soon he's going to be up here saying complex sentences. He's a perfect example. He's a perfect example that every child learns differently. He's a perfect example that every child learns differently. He didn't pick up the skills as quickly as his brother did because every child is different. then don't do it if you know you're going to get in trouble. No, not yet. Now let's move on. Next, we're going to be talking about the sedentary trait. The sedentary trait is more or less children that like to read. They're children whose high motor is actually much lower than other children's motor. They don't seem to have, they have energy, but the thing is, they expend their energy much quicker than somebody who has an active trait. Now, just in case you're probably wondering, you keep saying that word trait. What is the full term? The full term is called temperament trait. Say it with me, Christopher. Say temperament.
Temperament.
Trait.
Trait.
That's the full terminology. The full terminology is called temperament trait. And every child has different temperament traits, okay? I want to kind of get out my notebook, but I know I can't right now because it's buried in all this stuff. Getting to it is going to be like almost next to impossible.
To Mickey. Mickey's going to get to.
Yeah. Every child's temperament trait is different, okay? So a child might have an active temperament, a child may have a fearful temperament, a child may have a sanguine temperament, a child may have a proud temperament. Those temperament traits are just all their characteristics that make them up to being the child that they are. And your approach with them does matter. And like I said, I'm not trying to say this as far as being in the classroom environment because I applied this to my real life, okay, with my actual kids. I didn't just use this in the confines of my classroom when I was teaching my children. I applied this to my real life outside of the classroom, and it had a very profound effect on how I raised my children. I realized when my son was much younger that Christopher has an active temperament. He likes to run around and he likes to do stuff like that. But when he was much younger, he was more sedentary than he was active. I was able to engage that sedentary ability when he was just like 2-3 months. You know, I was able to achieve that ability to sit down with him and teach him and read to him and stuff like that and increase his vocabulary. I actively used my ability to do good with that since he was sedentary, and it worked out. Now understand, every child's temperament trait is not the same, okay, as when they're born. My son, Christopher, had a sedentary temperament trait when he was born, but then grew into an active temperament trait as he got older, okay? So their temperament traits can change. So that's why it matters about your approach to the child. You can't approach the child with, you know, a sedentary temperament trait and think that you're going to engage them and make them active. They're not going to do that, okay? Now, back to what I was saying. The child with the sedentary temperament trait is mostly a child that likes to sit down. They like to learn. They like to read. They like to color. Those children are the ones who have a very creative gene, okay? They prefer doing activities that require them to have to think. You can engage their mind and you can engage their creative abilities. You can, you know, they're the ones that are fun. When I was a kid, my temperament trait was sedentary as well. I had a sedentary temperament trait. Now, okay. I'll log to her account and renew it. Okay. So, what I found that I like to do with kids who have a sedentary temperament trait is I do very creative activities with them. Things where, like, I get to engage their ability to want to manipulate things. For example, when Chris was much younger, what I did with him was I did a lot of arts and craft activities when he was much younger. Okay. I remember one activity I did with him one time was we made boats. Okay, I took. Okay. The queen is sending me a bunch of messages. She just made it to work. Okay, so we made boats. I took popsicle sticks and I took construction paper and I cut out the design of a triangle for the sail, and I took out a semicircle for the bottom of the boat. Okay, and I taught him how to paste the triangular part for the sail onto the top of the popsicle stick and to take the popsicle stick and paste it to the bottom of the boat, to the part of the main part of the boat. Okay? And from there, we continue to make boats. Now that he's much older, I know I can modify that and do something a bit different with him. But now that he has that active temperament trait, I know instead of doing that, I can do a water activity with him. I can do a water activity with him where this time we can learn whether or not a boat floats or sinks. Does that sound fun?
Yeah.
So instead, what I can do with him is I can say, okay, we're going to find out what floats or sinks. I can even use him with it. I can go to a city pool, right? And I can say, okay, so Chris, what we're going to do is we're going to find out what floats or sinks. I can go ahead and I can say, okay, so if I were to put you in the water with, this rock, do you think you will float or sink? Let him hold the rock and see if he's going to float or sink. If he sinks, then, okay, what happened? I sunk. So then you know that rocks sink because they're heavier than the water. Okay? I don't have to make it that daggone complicated. Okay? But the point is, I can engage his active temperament trait by doing things like that. We can even do. I remember with him one time I did when he was much younger. I engaged his sedentary ability. We were sitting there and we were watching a program on TV doing a sing along. With these children, you can engage with them more doing interactive media and doing interactive activities. For example, with my son, I put on like a little puppet show for him when he was much younger. I did. And you enjoyed it, Chris. I use sock puppets.
But not now.
No, it's because I don't have my sock puppets no more. I did a sock puppet show with him where I was teaching Christopher when he was younger about what love means. So that's why I'm saying you have to understand the child's temperament traits. Okay? Okay. Hold on. So we covered the active temperament trait and we covered the sedentary temperament trait. Now, the sanguine temperament trait means that the child likes to be around a bunch of other children. That means you can't, that means do not try to take the child out by themselves all the time. Sometimes they're going to see other kids and want to run over and play with those other children. If you are a stingy parent and you don't want your child around other children and yet they have a sanguine temperament trait, understand, you're doing horrible as a parent. You're doing horrible as a parent. And this goes for grandparents as well. Understand what you're doing with that child. I noticed with Noah's temperament trait is more of an active temperament trait now, and that has been that way since he was born. And I know when he gets to be older, probably like Christopher, that he's probably going to retreat into a more sedentary temperament trait. It's going to change because most children between the ages of 3 to 5, their temperament traits change. Okay, it's normally between the grades of Head Start and Pre-K that the child's temperament traits change. Christopher's temperament traits changed when he got to be a bit older, and he started going to Pre-K. No, Christopher became more active. He wanted to run around and do things. So, is it going to be possible to sit down at the table and have a quiet breakfast with him? No. You're going to scratch your head and wonder why he's getting up wanting to be the cereal monster. Because he wants to run around and be cereal monster. You're not going to be able to have a quiet breakfast with him. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what you're doing. Yeah, it has colors on it. You just started noticing that? Sit back.
I am in the sun. What's in the sun?
Yeah, it's a lot of colors. So, with those who have the sanguine temperament trait, they tend to pick up. Now, this is the downside to the sanguine temperament trait and why you have to be careful with this trait. The kids sometimes pick up a lot of what they see other kids doing. Christopher has a bit of a sanguine temperament trait, but that was only because he was pushed into a sanguine temperament trait by my mother, sadly. Before, Christopher didn't have it. Christopher was more of a fearful temperament trait. He didn't want to go around other kids. He wanted to just, be by himself and play. But my mom changed that, which is nothing wrong with that. It is a bit dangerous because those children can develop depression, But it's nothing wrong with wanting some alone time. Shush. Since he's been in school, he picked up the temperament trait of being a sanguine. And the problem is now he mimics one of his classmates. Noah. Shh. He mimics one of his classmates. And when he mimics that classmate, he brought home this language that him and his friend at school uses that I will not tolerate. And I've told my son, we don't say that. I said, you can say that when you're in school around your friend, but you're not going to say that here.
What?
You know full well what I'm talking about, Christopher Duty Head.
Why?
He just responded to it because that's exactly what he says.
Why?
And I tell you all the time, do I like that type of language in my home?
No.
Where should it stay? At school.
Yeah. I'm not doing that no more. I'm done. I'm done with that. I'm done with that. I'm done with that, man.
Okay. I hope that you won't use that language anymore because it's not you. That language has always been the way that Royan talks to you. That's how Royan responds to you. You don't have to respond to Royan the same way that he responds to you. You can be yourself and respond to Royan the way that you like to respond to him. Like you can just say good morning or hey Royan, or you can just,
say hi Royan, buddy.
You don't have to say that.
Yeah, Royan.
You don't say that. See, that's the point. You are still saying the exact same thing that he would say to you, but you don't have to say that because that's not how you talk to Royan.
If you say hello, Royan,
then leave it at that. You just say hello to him. You don't have to call him out of his name and stuff like that because just because Royan does that with you and his father might be okay with him doing that to other children doesn't mean your parents are going to be okay with you doing that.
No.
So you have to understand, Christopher, that that's not the way to talk to other children, okay? Some children don't like being called butt heads. Some people don't like being called duty heads, okay?
I'm done. I said I'm done with.
Okay, so that's the only problem with the sanguine temperament tree. Sometimes with those kids, they tend to pick up from their environment the bad qualities and bring it home with them. But a good parent knows how to challenge that situation and say, okay, well, I'm not going to allow you to bring that into my home. Understand, you can say that when you're with your friends, but you're not going to say it here. So, I mean, as I just did, of course. Stop. Relax. So, let's move on. Now, those with the fearful temperament trait, these kids are the isolated children. They're the ones who do not like to be bothered with the other kids. They like to be standoffish by themselves. They're fearful that these other children are going to hurt them. They're fearful that these other children are going to be mean to them. They're fearful that these other children are out to get them. These children are children that need a lot of attention paid closely to them. Because 9 times out of 10, something happened at home with them to make them fearful of other children. Maybe mommy and daddy hit too much. Or maybe daddy hits mommy. Or maybe mommy hits daddy. Whatever be the case, this child has been exposed to some type of violence. And that violence has had an impact on that child where it makes that child fearful of being around other people. These children will sometimes even become standoffish to you as an adult. Okay? How do you engage those children that are fearful of other people? Well, do an activity with them at home. You can pretty much either leave out a book. These type of children are children that can be either or, okay? With that child, you're going to have to figure out their temperament trait. Noah. Nip, nip. Nip, nip. Nip. So, okay, so the next thing. With those children who have a fearful temperament trait, the one thing I always like to tell parents, pay very close attention to your child. I mean, sometimes children can grow into this just because of the fact that it's something new to them. A lot of times it doesn't have to be something as far as violence or anything like that going on in the home. It could be just because the child is just not used to being around other children. The best way to curb this is to allow that child to have exposure to other children periodically throughout their entire life. Start out with a low number of maybe 2 kids and increase that number over the years. The older they get, you start to increase the number more and more and more. Can I help you?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Just need to get on the bed and sit.
And why are you touching the bed? Okay. So, periodically just, utilize that ability to increase that number of children that they're exposed to. What I did with Christopher was I started taking him to story time. And at first, Christopher didn't like it. He didn't want to go because there was too many kids. And I started noticing being around a lot of children, he was very fearful. When he would get around the other children, he would start crying, wanting me to pick him up. And I said, okay, well, I got to figure out how to do this without having him fearful. Now, mind you, I didn't take all the courses I took for early childhood education. I just figured this out because it's common sense. But you said, I'm talking.
I still like story time.
I know you do. That's good. You can't go anymore because you're going to be in kindergarten.
I don't want to be in kindergarten.
Yes, you do.
No, how do you know that?
Anywho. So, like I said, shush. So, all right, stop, both of y'all. So, after I started realizing he was scared of being around other children, I started out slowly. I started out with exposing him to his, letting him be around his cousin first. And then periodically I went further to being around his cousin, to taking him to story time, to then taking him, when he was at story time, I wouldn't let him go over there with the rest of the other kids because he was too scared. I would let the kids come to him. And one of the other children did come to him to share a toy, and Christopher shared the toy with him. And over time, Christopher started to become more comfortable being around the children. It starts with certain things that you do. It doesn't have to always be, it's not always going to be a situation where the child has been exposed to violence. But in those extreme cases that the child has been exposed to violence, it is worth investigating because this may be leading to more psychological damage than you think. Okay, so let's move on from there. So we covered the active temperament trait. We covered the sedentary temperament trait. We covered the fearful temperament trait. I said active, sedentary, fearful, sanguine. Yep. Now is the neutral temperament trait. This one is fun because the neutral temperament trait means that this is a child that can be more than one temperament trait, and their primary temperament trait that they have, which is the main one that's about them, their main characteristic that's about them, is something that you might not ever know because this child's temperament trait can be either or. With Christopher, he had 2 temperament traits when he was young. When he was young, his temperament traits were active and at the same time sedentary. He started becoming active as he got older, but he was sedentary when he was much younger. But along with being sedentary, he was also fearful. So it was learning how to engage those temperament traits the right way. That was the challenge. So those children with neutral temperament traits are fun to be around because you can do a lot of things with them, and it's fun because you don't know exactly what they're going to be at first. One minute it can be like they have a high motor and want to run around and play with the kids outside. Or you can take them outside and you can take them to the park and stuff like that. Which I'm going to get to that part of what are some activities you can do with each. So, Okay, so I don't carry on too long. With the neutral temperament trait, they can have either or, okay? So we covered sedentary, we covered sanguine, we covered fearful, we covered active, we covered neutral. Well, let me see. Yeah, we covered neutral. Now, I'm going to give you guys some activities you can do with each temperament trait because I'm not going to cover every single last temperament trait. There are lots of them. Okay. So with the active child, you can do this. You can take your child to the playground during the spring and summer months. And I'll break it down by months. So as far as January and February go, take them outside to build a snowman if it's snowing. Take them outside to do snow activities where they get to go outside and interact with the snow or stuff like that. Don't do that. Don't do that. So, through March, because you have December, January, February, which normally is winter, March, April, and May. Okay, May is start of summer. So March, April, and May, now it's springtime. Yes, it's springtime. You can take your child outside. Do nature hikes with the child, with the active, with the, yep, or you can fly a kite. Thank you, Christopher, for adding that. Take them outside to fly a kite. A lot of windy days happen during the springtime. So you can take them to fly a kite. You can take them out on, nature adventures where they get to interact with nature. Take them to go plant a tree, stuff like that. Or in that case, with the active child, you might not want to try to plant a tree. You're not gonna hold their attention too long. So that's actually a bad example. But you can go take them to go play tree tag, where you guys can run to each tree and put certain color sticker on the tree and say, okay, this will be a neutral area where you can't tag me. So you can take them outside to play tag. You can take them outside to play red light, green light. You can take them outside to play Simon Says. You can take them to the basketball court, throw the football around with them, throw the baseball around with them. Take them outside to play soccer. So sports, you can take them to the playground to play on the swings. Stuff like that. Let them go play in the sandbox. Take them to the beach to build sandcastles. Take them swimming. Something that always engage their ability to be able to use their body. Okay. Now, for the sedentary child. For the sedentary child, you can take them to the museum. You can take them to the library. You can take them to book fairs. You can take them to, arts and crafts exhibits. Like, you can take the child to to an art gallery. Okay? You can take them to the National Aquarium, take them to the zoo, stuff like that. You're not going to really get a lot of high streams activity out of them, so taking them to the park is not necessarily a good idea because they might not play. So you can take them to the park to play in the sandbox where you guys make something. You can go on a nature hike with that child and pick up different samples of stuff in nature. A lot of children with that temperament trait are like a lot of science. So they like to discover things. Next, after that, you can, like I said, so with them, it's a lot of things that you can do as far as taking them to places. You can take them out to eat. You can take them to a movie. You can do a lot more with a sedentary child than you can with somebody active if you don't want to be burning a bunch of calories. So now with the fearful child, like I said, you have to be able to. I'm gonna put new. I'm gonna do neutral this time instead of fearful. With neutral, you can do everything that I just listed for both sides. With those children, they are more able to do a lot of things than most other children. With the fearful child, you need to do activities that start to expose them to children early on. Go to your local library for story time. Um, when they have like a book fair or something, you take them to the book fair, you know, not all the time, not every year. Don't make it a habit to take them every year, but you take them every now and then when they go and do that, you know. Now, after that, okay. So those are some activities you can do with each child. With the sanguine temperament trait, just expose them to a lot of children, allow the child to always be around a bunch of kids. Take them to story time, take them to the playground to play around with other kids. Take them to things like the aquarium when there's going to be a bunch of kids around. Things that allow them to interact with other children. So those are a list of things you can do. I hate doing this part, but I have to do this part because then a lot of people tend to make this mistake. This are a list of things you cannot do with each temperament trait. With the active temperament trait, never, ever, ever, ever take them somewhere that you don't want to find something broken. Do not take them to the museum. Do not take them to the store. Do not take them to... So that means if you have to go to the supermarket, don't take them to the supermarket with you. Why? They're going to become very bored. If they're sitting for too long, that child is going to want to get into something. They have a very high motor. So that means that their ability to keep their attention, your ability to keep their attention is not going to be very long. For example, hold this pen, Christopher. Now, I told him to hold the pen. How much you want to bet in the next 5 minutes that pen is going to find its way to doing something else other than what I said for him to do? Now, I told him to hold it. In less than 5 seconds, he started playing with the bottom of the pen as far as pushing the pen and opening and closing it. And I said to only do one thing. Just hold it. Again, like I said, you're not going to be able to hold their attention span for too long. Now his attention is on that pen. You're not going to be able to hold their attention span for too long. With those children who have a high motor that are active, you need to be doing something active with them. So that means sharing a joke with them is not going to work. They're not going to laugh with you. They're going to look at you like you're retarded. They're going to want to get down and do something else. You're not going to be able to take them with you to the store. Now, Christopher, when we go into the supermarket, do I not try to do fun things with you?
Yes.
Yes. I might do something where I might run with the cart for a little bit and spin the cart. Or I'll engage his ability because Christopher has a chameleon trait. Now, I didn't explain this one. The chameleon temperament trait is a temperament trait where the child matches the temperament of the people around him. Okay? This is fun. This is fun. This is the best part. The chameleon temperament trait is a trait where the child matches the temperament traits of the ones around them. So, for example, let's say if Christopher goes around a bunch of kids who like to read books. Christopher, because he wants to fit in with those children, will sit down with those kids and become all of a sudden the sedentary temperament trait, even though he knows he likes to run around and bang his head into things. I mean, literally, my son ran into a file cabinet at school. I don't know how that happened, but he did. But that's clearly the example of what I mean about not engaging the active temperament trait. I keep saying I can teach circles around these fools.
My head. My head hurt. Ouch.
Anyway,
Yep.
so he has a chameleon temperament trait. His temperament trait changes with the environment. He can literally become like all the other children because he'll try to do what he can to fit in with them. Every child eventually gets the chameleon temperament trait over time because they want to fit in with their friends. They don't want to have that feeling of being left out. Each and every one of us who are adults eventually were children, and we did the exact same thing when we were in high school and when we were in middle school. We wanted to fit in with the cool kids, so we copied what the cool kids did. All of a sudden, I'm a cool bro. I'm one of the hip dudes. I'm one of the yo-yos. Nah, you don't need to do all that. No, you'll be happy being yourself, but eventually you'll understand that. I'm gonna tell you now, parents. Do not stress your brain out trying to tell your child, be yourself, be unique. Because I'm going to tell you, when they have the chameleon temperament trait, it's falling on deaf ears. You have to let them grow out of it, okay? You grew out of it. I'm sure they will as well. A lot of children eventually grow out of their habits because they become scared of what might happen if they do what the other person did. So let's say if David tells Christopher, hey, Christopher, let's set this locker on fire. Christopher might realize, oh shoot, if I set this locker on fire, I'm going to where?
To jail.
There you go. So if I do that, I'm going to jail. I'm not doing that. So he might not, all of a sudden, that chameleon trait is going to change. And he's going to become the active person. And he's going to say, I'm out of here. And Christopher's going to run and leave that situation alone and never see David again a day in his life. Might even come home, David set a locker on fire at the school. Okay, I'm calling the popos. And there you go. So those with that temperament trait have a tendency to always mimic their environment. But then when the situation becomes a bit too much, that situation changes. So we have to understand that. Now, so several things you can't do with someone with an active temperament trait. You can't take them to the supermarket. You cannot take them to the museum. You cannot take them to the library. To read books. They're not going to do it. They're going to end up turning the books into a tower and knocking it down and playing Power Rangers. You cannot take them to an expensive store to go buy furniture. You can't take them and try to teach them about machine parts and stuff like that. You're not going to be able to do those things. The only way to engage a child with an active temperament trait is to always do something that causes them to become active. Now, with someone with the sedentary temperament trait, you cannot take them to karate. You cannot take them to basketball camp. You cannot take them to soccer camp. You cannot take them to the playground to play on the swing. You cannot take them to do stuff like that because they are not active. They like to be sedentary. So understand, sedentary means I'm going to sit my behind down and that's all you're going to get out of me. For somebody with the neutral temperament trait. With the neutral temperament trait, you can take them anywhere. With someone with the fearful temperament trait, you cannot take them to any place with a high volume of children. That means don't try to take them to story time and think that they're going to interact with the other kids. That means don't try to take them to Aunt Josie's house for a birthday party. They're not going to interact with the other kids. They're going to sit with you the whole time. And unless you plan on having Kitty with you the whole time and aggravating the situation, trust me when I say this, taking them to the party with the other kids is not going to work. They're not going to have fun. They're going to hate you for the rest of your life. Thank you, son. Sit back. all in the nutshell, you have to understand each child's temperament, and you need to understand how to engage that temperament. Do activities with your child that engages their temperament trait and allows them to continue to be a child. I can't stress this anymore. Allow your child to continue to be a child. That means if you have a child who is 5 years old, and let's say their temperament trait, sit back, bless you,
Ew.
sit back.
Ew. Okay.
Nip.
Kaka.
Thank you. Nip.
Kaka.
So, so understand that. Just today, all I wanted to try to do was try to teach everybody the understanding of the different type of temperament traits that each child has and how to engage those temperament traits. At the end of the day, it's not rocket science, people. Some of these things are just like, what would you like to do if you were in that situation? You can approach this situation the same way you do with adults. With adults, it's completely and utterly the same. There are things we like to do for fun that we might that describes us as to being who we are. For example, there are some adults who like to be sedentary, who like to just sit still and watch TV and don't want to go nowhere. You're not going to get that adult to come to a rock concert, are you, Christopher? No. You're not going to get that adult to come to a basketball game, are you? No. You're not going to get that adult to play soccer with you, are you? No. They're sedentary. They like to sit down and be boring. They're not going to do that. You know, they like to manipulate things and play in Play-Doh and, you know, and yeah, but you like to turn the Play-Doh into something you can throw. So,
Turn me to a ball.
see, look at that. Anyway, I don't make this stuff up, people. So just learn your children's temperament traits and what they like to do for fun, and allow a child to always be a child. You know, don't take that away from them. I can say this as much as I don't like to, but you know, most of my life when I was a kid, I didn't have much of a childhood. I didn't get to have a childhood. Running around with other kids and my temperament trait being activated and being manipulated was not. My temperament trait didn't get. My temperament trait wasn't utilized. It wasn't. I had to grow up very quickly. And the same for, you know, my wife. She had to grow up pretty quickly too. And her temperament trait wasn't utilized either. Between me and her, both of us were active. Now, I say we were definitely active because she likes to play basketball. She always talks about it. When she was much older, when she got into high school, she chose to get into basketball. She would not be in basketball if it were up to her parents. If it were up to her parents, she probably would have been pretty much sitting at home or going to the museum or going to the Blacks and Wax Museum or going to the African American Studies Museum or going to the Afro this, Afro that. Whatever, it would have been just a big ass fucking history lesson that pretty much does not do much of anything but give a history lesson. It would not be anything that she would have been interested in. I've learned after being with her over all these years, that she's not really that interested into history. She's not. She's not that interested into history, into stuff like that. She wants to be able to manipulate things. She wants to be able to interact with things. She likes roller coasters. And that's another thing. With those, you know what? I'm going to do another one after this. So, to end this one off, that's the temperament trait for children. Look out for part 2 coming in exactly a couple of minutes.